Hello and welcome to Personable, a podcast focused on speaking to the world's best, enabling you to become the best that you can be. My name is Harvey Bracken-Smith, and this is the 100th episode of Personable. You might expect some big name guests, but I thought it would be great to bring it back to its roots and have me as the host, telling you my journey, my story, thanking everyone for helping me get to this point, and what my thoughts are for the future. As you may or may not know, I use my iPad in order to take notes throughout the podcast. And so I thought it would be authentic to kind of interview myself in a way and to give my thoughts and perspectives on how I got to this point without having some perfectly orchestrated or prepared interview. So the first thing I wanted to say is I wanted to say thank you. I wanted to say thank you to the people that encouraged me to start the podcast, to keep going, that listened into every episode. You might think when I say thank you for every like, thank you for every comment, that I'm saying that just for the sake of saying it. You know, you get these bigger creators who say, oh, every like counts. And to an extent that is true, but for me, I've realized over time that every like is a person who's gone out of their day, who could do anything in the world. You know, the opportunity cost of listening to my podcast versus doing anything in their life is the decision to simply listen to me for even 5 seconds out of their day. And as I've got to episode 100 now, you know, going from single to double digits to now triple digits, that impact is truly unbelievable. Every like, every comment, every share, even every subscribe, every single person that has helped get me to this point and that has encouraged me to keep going, that has not gone unnoticed. Every message, every person who has connected me to a guest or just given me a comment to say, great job, Harvey, every one of those things has driven me to this point to evolve into the person that I am today, and for that I am grateful, because this podcast is not simply a podcast but is an evolution of who I am as a human being, who I was, where I am at this point in time, and where I want to be. And so every single comment and every single interaction that you guys had in my life through my podcast and or otherwise has got me to where I am today, and for that I am very grateful. I want to take you back to a point, and that point is August 12th of 2022. So throughout the summer of 2022, I had just finished Eton College, and I'd been doing my A-level exams early that year. And for those that don't know, A-level exams are, instead of in the US where you have the GPA system, you take these exams at the end of your senior year. And that's basically the culmination of your exams and all of your efforts throughout your junior and senior years into one exam for one subject. And you only do 3 subjects, so big exams. And I can recall finishing those exams on the 21st of June, 2022. And I'd got really burnt out, I got very stressed, and so I flew home the same day. And I eventually got home, and literally the minute I got back into the door, I found out that my mum not only had cancer again, but that she was terminally ill. And I can't describe how broken I was on the inside. I mean, you know, you hear from everyone online just what it takes to be motivational, to be disciplined, to take these hard things on the chin and to truly push through. But I cannot tell you, I cannot put into words, and you can even... This is a reason I wanted to just talk on these podcasts instead of preparing, because I wanted you to feel the emotion that I had as I went through that moment. I was at a table with my brother Freddie, my dad and my mum, and literally the minute my parents started speaking the words of my mum had cancer, I had to walk 20 meters away and to the other side or the edge of the garden or where we were sitting. It was so unbelievably upsetting and overwhelming that I couldn't even control how I felt, what I wanted to be, and what I wanted to look like. You know, we all have these emotions and all have these things inside us trying to hyper-optimize and become the best versions of ourselves. But in that moment, as I'm sure that there will be many moments for my listeners on this podcast, there are moments in life when things are just so incomprehensible. I mean, can you imagine growing up? You know, mum and dad are a constant in your life. You might gain new friends, a new girlfriend, a new job, a new whatever. But your parents, that is not something that you would ever be able to replace. And so the idea that my mum was going to die was just like horrific. And I made a mistake that summer because I was going to America starting mid-August, I decided that instead of taking a year off, I was going to squeeze many trips and as many things in as I could in those 6-week period between the end of school and starting at Duke. And so what I did is I flew back to Eton 2 days later, had my leaving stuff, and then a week later I went off on a leavers trip, and then some of my friends came to Jersey where I live, and I was just doing things all that summer, and so I never had a real point in time to appreciate the loss that I was that I felt. I mean, even not losing my mum, the idea that my mum could go, that is something you have to process. And instead of taking a step back, I took too many steps forward. And I, quite frankly, from when a point that I was already burnt out, it made me get worse. And I got to the point of August 12th, and I was at a music festival called Boardmasters in the UK. And I had this idea for a podcast in the summer, because during my time at Eton College, I helped run something called the Society Programme, where from 8:45 to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday, we'd hear from world-famous speakers. We're talking, CEOs and entrepreneurs, from the founders and CEOs of Deliveroo, Ocado, Manchester United, Chelsea, Azelroo, and then the Investment Society. We had people like top investment bankers from Goldman Sachs, Citi, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, founders of VCs and hedge funds. And so I thought, what if I could take the same caliber of speakers and make the talks public? And I had this idea in my mind, whilst all the, I was dealing with the grief of my mum, finding out that she was ill, but also trying to spend time with my friends before going away to America and make the most of my life before moving to halfway across the world. But I also had this idea for a podcast. And throughout my teenage years, I'd had many ideas for things that I thought could be successful. I'd had ideas for startups and apps, and I used to resell clothes, and I tried to code. I don't know if I've mentioned that already, but I would only do things, from between a 1 month and 5 month period. I hadn't mastered the idea of discipline and consistency, because I knew that if I had an idea and I truly wanted to make it happen, I would do it, but could I keep myself committed to it for long enough? And so that's something I wanted to do with the podcast, because I knew that if I posted one podcast a week forever, that would be my metric of success. And I knew that all I had to do was just start. I knew that no matter how bad these episodes could be, as long as I started, I could use that as a metric for, this is where I am now and this is where I want to go. So whatever it is now, even if it's worse now, at least there's more room to grow. And so I got to August 12th, and I was at this music festival, as I've described, and I think for a couple days, I just didn't really eat. It was one of the hottest weekends in the UK for a while. I think it even got to 40 degrees Celsius, and I didn't really sleep because it was so hot. And it was like a supermoon. And I'd had a day earlier that year with my mum, before, when she was, maybe even the year prior, before, when she was ill and then got better again, and now, she's obviously ill again. But I'd had a moment with my mum where we went outside and we looked at the full moon. And it was sort of this spiritual moment in which I felt connected to her on a deeper level. I am Catholic, just to put that out there, but it wasn't even a religious point. It was more of a connectivity moment to my mum. And even if you're an atheist or agnostic or whatever religion you are, there are definitely moments in life when you feel like there is something greater than yourself, some connection to the universe. And I remember, with my mum, she had wanted to do everything she could to get better, and up until that point it had worked. And she had these sort of crystals, and she put them outside to recharge in the moon. I'm thinking, this is absolute bullshit. But it was just that the very fact that my mum was so believing in the ability that she could get better, that moment really stayed true to me. And even in my pocket today, and I'll get back to the August 12th moment, even in my pocket today, my mum had a few crystals, one of which she'd hold in her hand every day while she was ill with cancer. And then 4 others, which, she went into a crystal shop. And again, I am not a crystal man, but more so as a connection and memorabilia to my mum, do I hold on to these. She had 4 crystals, which she gave to me, which she told me were good for my birth sign or whatever. Again, I'm not a crystal or birth sign man. But just having these things really keep me connected to my mum. And so with that information now, going back to that date on August 12th, I was sitting outside with this supermoon. It might have even been like a red moon. And I thought, fuck it, let me start my podcast. Again, as I said before, I was on basically no sleep for two or three nights, barely eaten any food, and it's 3 a.m. in the morning, and there's this supermoon outside. And so I thought it was a good idea to film my first podcast. I thought, let's just get it done, and then I can look back and I can improve from there. And so that's exactly what I did. I got my phone out, and I probably looked like a psychopath in the middle of the night under some big light, and I just started talking. And I was like, hi, my name's Harvey. This is the first episode of a podcast called Personable. I'm enabling you to learn from the world's best to become the best you can be. But the problem was, because I was so burnt out, so tired, hadn't eaten, dehydrated, sad because of my mum, away from all of my friends, in the middle of a field at a music festival, this podcast wasn't anything that I wanted to be. And in fact, that night when I filmed it at 2 or 3 a.m., I then walked 2 or 3 hours to the closest gas station, posted it, and I posted it all over social media. And I remember my parents then waking up at 6 a.m. and being like, "Oh my God, Harvey, what have you done?" And, I was like, "What do you mean, what have I done?" And they're like, "Harvey, you just can't have this online." Because essentially it was just me rambling for an hour, mumbling on my words because I was burnt out. I wasn't having a consistent stream of consciousness. And so it's just gobbledygook. No one wants to see any version of themselves online, let alone a family member, of them at a lower point in time. And I wasn't drinking, I wasn't on drugs, never done drugs, but I was just never I was not Harvey. And I share that story not to be like, this is where I was and look at where I am now, because, I could just put that in the past and move on. But I think not even just to tell other people as a place, this is where I was and this is where I am now, but also as an ode to myself. This is now episode 100 of the podcast, and that was the first episode, which I ended up scrapping and refilming a month later and posting 7 or 8 months later. But that was a signal moment in which I decided it doesn't matter how bad this podcast is, episode 1. I'm committing to this. I'm going to do it no matter what it takes, and I'm going to improve. And I don't care if I'm embarrassed in front of the whole world and if people hate on me or, think what I'm doing is stupid. Because you know what people won't be able to deny is that at least I tried. At least I put my best foot forward, and at least I gave it a shot. That's all I have ever wanted to do, and that's what I want to do. I've been, throughout my teenage years, I used to be so insecure and so embarrassed over the most minute and tiny details. So even just that first episode, even though my parents in disbelief thinking that was a stupid thing to do, as, people were checking up on me, obviously suffering with the grief of my mother and stuff. But I was proud of myself. I was proud of myself for putting myself out there. And without that episode, I don't know if I would have ever taken that first step to now 100 episodes now. And, following that, I decided to take a gap year because I wanted to spend more time with my mum. I worked at a VC in a hedge fund. I got my podcast off the ground, did 4 episodes before going to Duke and doing, 1 a week for 17 weeks straight. And I've talked about this in other podcasts. And so now that I've told that story, I think that's a profound, I did it. I've finally done something where I've done it for more than 5 months. I've done it consistently, and I've done it well. And you might listen to this podcast and be like, what is Harvey on about? Why is he sharing this with the world? Is this just a point of, oh, wow, you've done something well, whatever. But it's as I continue through my life, as I continue to try and become the best that I can be in my own life, I want this to be a signifier for that when I'm older and I look back, I can tell myself, I tried and I did my best. And I want other people to come and listen to this episode when I hopefully go on, or when I go on to achieve great things, and be like, he started here, he didn't always have it figured out, but he told himself and he told the world, whatever I don't know, I'm going to go figure it out. And I think that's one of the things that I want to be known for. So now that I've hit 100 episodes, it coincides with in the past week, I've now hit 1,000 subscribers. And I started a newsletter 7 or 8 weeks ago now. In fact, I need to write the one for this week. I've been a bit slow. And I would write in, every week how many subscribers I was at. And, getting a subscriber is a really, really hard thing to do. I think people massively overestimate just how hard it is to get people to watch your content. I think one of the things at the start was like, I don't want to post myself on TikTok or Instagram or LinkedIn or YouTube or whatever it is, because too many people will watch. I think we all have this spotlight effect in which we think you put something out into the world and the CEO of Goldman Sachs and Google and Apple and everyone in the whole world is going to see it. When actually, to get people to look at your content is really hard. And if they do, positively or negatively, you have done a good job, because at least you know that you are someone worth watching, worth following, and someone that's, it's worthwhile people having an emotion to. And so I wanted to say thank you to everyone that has supported me throughout this journey. And I know I mentioned that at the start of the podcast, because 1,000 subscribers to me, as much as I've said my goal is 10,000 before the end of the year, and it still is, I will do my best to get there. But 1,000 is such a milestone for me, because when I started this podcast, I told my mum, I'm going to get to 1,000 subscribers. And I had a YouTube channel as I was 13 years old, and I only got to 50 subscribers, and I quit and I deleted all my videos. And you can watch my other videos to find out why I did that, because I was embarrassed. But 1,000 to me is a key moment in which it goes, this is a podcast for fun, to this is now something that can be taken seriously. When you go on a YouTube channel that's got 1,000 subscribers or more, you're like, this person knows what they're talking about. This person is an expert in some field. And so to have finally hit that level, is an incredible moment for me. And I think the reason I've got to this point without having a set niche, there's always that thing in social media, are you tech, are you finance, are you business? I would say mine has been more personal growth focused with the core thesis being, I believe that by learning from the best in the world, whether you're an Olympian, actress, CEO, doctor, lawyer, whatever you may be, that there are commonalities in the lessons, journeys of these people that we can apply to our own lives. But it's not like this is a channel for doctors, lawyers, actors, and that's really hard to get to, because even from an SEO, search engine optimization standpoint, it's really, really hard to get a YouTube or Google algorithm to draw people to your content, because it applies to so many people. It's almost better to get a core audience and build from that than it is to try and apply to everyone. But the funny thing is, and I think why I've been successful, you might think that more subscribers are successful, but my own definition of successful in getting to this point of 1,500 subscribers, 50,000 views or long form downloads, 20,000 views on my 27,000 or whatever on my 2 or 3 podcasts ago, and the point in time that I'm at now is that I have built for love and for passion. There was a point inside me where I was like, I'm going to build this podcast because I want to be rich and famous, and this will be my platform to start my own business. And there is still a strong belief that will happen in terms of getting more growth, connecting to more amazing people, building a business, building more businesses off the back of it. But at the same time, getting it to this point, it takes more than a pure thing to say, my goal is to be successful, and that's just what I'm going to do, what I want to do. But you have to have a love for it. Many of actors I've actually spoken to, because there's a big question in the acting world, because acting is a very good example of something in which it isn't like a gradual road to success. Let's say you go be an investment banker at Goldman Sachs, right? You earn whatever salary, and obviously, being an investment banker, you're earning a very high salary relative to the rest of the population, but you're still earning a salary. And then, analyst year 1, analyst year 2, analyst year 3, associate, VP, MD. It's kind of this gradual increase in success. Whereas being an actor, you're either on Hollywood, on the red carpet, ultra successful, can make a living off it, or you're a bartender, a waitress, a cleaner, a nanny. Nothing wrong with those jobs. But in terms of if your goal is to be an actor, all the money goes to those at the top. It's the same with being a professional tennis player. All of the money goes to the top 100, 200 players, and then the 200 to 1,000, 1,000 to 200,000 players basically get left with nothing. It's the exact same thing with podcasting. And so you have to go from that point and be like, on a statistical basis, am I going to succeed in this? Hopefully, yes, I will do everything I can to be successful in this. But what's going to keep you going? If 99% of people are never going to be successful in this thing, what keeps you going? Is it the eventual hope that you earn money? Because in that case, then it's not a worthwhile pursuit. Because there are so many other things that you could spend the same amount of time, be unbelievably successful, if not more successful, earn more money, have more freedom of your time, get viewed by people, and yet, would have a higher chance of success. Whereas something like this, the odds of making it in podcasting are so unbelievably low. And so when I had that first episode with, I think, Sinatra Sarkar, who's my 3rd episode, and now Tim McInnery, who's something like my 90th episode, it makes you think that this is what I've been able to do in my podcast. In that this is not something where, if I get 1 view or 10 or 100 or 27,000, that keeps me going. Because even after the 27,000 episode, I have my next podcast, it's like 40 views or 100 views or whatever. It is the belief that what I am doing has had such a positive impact on my life and the people around me that it is worthwhile to keep doing, whether or not I am successful out of it on an extrinsic basis. I would argue that the guests I've been able to meet, the connections I've been able to make, the understandings and learnings that I've been able to have are so unbelievable, are so incredible, and have had such a profound impact on my life that even if no one had ever heard of Personable, no one had ever heard of Harvey Bracken-Smith, but I spoke to the exact same 100 people, that it would still be a worthwhile pursuit, that I would still be doing as well in my life in all the other areas that I am doing, and so therefore I would do it again. If there is anything in your life that you think, if by doing this, I will become more eloquent, I will become better connected, I will learn how to speak to the best people on the planet, or at least become better than I was yesterday, then that is a pursuit worth doing. And I think there's too many things in the world right now where we focus on how much we can earn instead of how much we can learn. And I think that is such an important thing to focus on. Yes, you need to provide money for your family, and yes, it is a very hard economic environment right now, And so maybe you don't have time to do things. But I do think that if you do have an extra hour, that instead of spending time on Netflix or doing some other pursuit in which you're consuming content, if there is the capacity to create connections, content, music, art, start a business, whatever it is, even if that thing isn't successful, you will become a better person from it. And that is something which I can wholeheartedly say from this podcast. And I wrote another note here, passion and what is real. Something that my dad has always told me is he's always told me and he showed me the differentiation between what is real and what is idea. And I have had hundreds of ideas. You know, there are many people in Silicon Valley that will end up telling you ideas are useless, it's all about execution, and to an extent that is true. But I also do believe that there are phenomenal ideas, as is I believe that this podcast was, and will continue to be a phenomenal idea. And so I don't want to tell the world, this is a great idea, go and do it. But I do think there's an extent to which if you take anything and you add passion to it, it goes from an idea to a living product. It's the same thing, you can have a network, you can just know people, but if you actually interact with these people, you provide value, you speak to them, you introduce them to other people, it becomes this living, breathing thing. And I think that's what I've done with this podcast. This element of passion and wanting to add value to the world, that is what I wanted to achieve and what I want to continue to achieve. And through this first 100 episodes and up to episode 1000 or whatever thing I do in my life, whether this is my last episode or my 100th out of 1 billion, I want you to see that I love what I do, that I will continue on this path of growth and of being the best that I can be, because that is the most important thing. The next thing I wrote down what's next? This is a question that I like to ask pretty much every guest on Personable. The final 3 questions I've started to ask guests are, number 1, if I was to ask someone in 100 years' time, what would you want your legacy to be and how would you be described? Number 2, what's next for you? And number 3, what is one thing that you want someone to take away from this episode? And in fact, I'm going to write that to myself now, so I actually, do the same thing for myself at the end of this episode. But the reason I bring up those 3 things is I think the idea of what's next is such an important thing. So many people are in the role that they're in today, but they don't think about, what's actually next for their future. Are you thinking about things on an immediate basis, or is this a stepping stone for where you want to be in 10 years' time? And I think kids have this inbuilt. You go from elementary school to middle school to high school to college to job, etc., and you just keep progressing like that. But once you get into a job, there is an element of which, do you even have to keep changing and improving and doing stuff? Because you already have a job, you already have income, you already have a family or whatever it is. So why keep going? So what's next for me? So I think that is an important question to ask. So right now I'm studying abroad at the University of Sydney. I'm a junior, so I'm in the 3rd out of 4 years at Duke University. I'm studying sociology as my major with a certificate in innovation entrepreneurship. And I'm going to Goldman Sachs as a sales and trading intern next summer in June, hoping I can get a return offer there. And so in terms of what happens with this podcast, I don't know what will happen. I mean, if I can, I will keep going with the podcast. Again, not out of a money basis, but just purely out of passion and love. And so I'll do what I can there. But even up to that point, I mean, I've got another few months of this year, I've got another semester at Duke in the spring, and then I've got another whole year. So I'm committing to keep posting and to producing content up until that point. So even if this podcast ceases to exist in a year and a half, which hopefully it doesn't, these episodes will still be out there for you to enjoy and for you to learn from. But what's next with the podcast? And this is a question that I'm asking myself at the moment, and I'd love any and all interaction in the comment section. Message me on LinkedIn or my email, which are pretty publicly available. And even if you follow me on Instagram, I'll probably follow you back and talk with you there. And the reason I ask what's next for me is haven't really had a solid niche. I mean, I've focused on speaking to the world's best in all these different fields, but I think there is an element to which an audience wants to go on and they want to view an episode and they want to be able to say, when I listen to Personable, when I listen to Harvey Bracken-Smith, what am I getting out of that interaction? Am I simply getting someone from the world's best? Okay, then why not just listen to Joe Rogan or the High Performance Podcast or Stephen Bartlett or Chris Williamson? The reason I would argue that you would want to listen to the episode is because me as the host, you like the way that I distill things, the questions I asked, how thoughtful I am about things, and how I'm able to get the guest to be as personable and as human as possible. That is my argument. But in a world of increased digitalization, social media, algorithms, SEO, thumbnails, titles, there is an element to which if you want to build a new audience, they can't know who you are. And so therefore, you can't rely on purely how good you are as a host, because in order to advertise how good something is, you have to get people to believe that the thing is as good as you know it is before they have tried the thing. It's like you've got to get people to believe how good Coca-Cola is before trying Coca-Cola. And so what does that look like? So right now I'm playing with the idea of, an emphasis on public and private markets. So focusing more on stock investments and what's happening with stock markets, but also private investments, focusing on VCs and founders, but also with the world's best. So let me know what you think. I am increasingly interested as I get into my career in the public markets, but also the private markets, as I've had increased exposure to lots of founders from Y Combinator, from massive LPs and massive VCs. And there's more to be said on that at a later date. So those two things. But I also do like the element of being able to interview incredibly interesting people. And I've got some incredible guests lined up for later this year who don't fit into that public or private market category, but who simply are the world's best, will teach me and my listeners, well, you, new knowledge, and so therefore are worthy to listen to. So if you've got any thoughts on that basis, please let me know. A thing I wrote down is lessons from mum and dad. I think as we're all kids, right, there's all these different things that you learn from your parents. You learn the importance of hard work, of love, of family, of doing the best you can with what you have. My dad would always tell me, never miss an open goal. So if you get to the point of you're 99% of the way done with a thing, make sure you finish the job instead of waiting for fate to happen. The importance of relationships, of love, of caring for people, of following through, of your word being your bond, all of these important things. And when I post on LinkedIn about a lot of the stories and the lessons that I learn, I think there is something important to note. And the important thing I would say to note is that a lot of the knowledge that I share is applied knowledge. So I think there's two types of knowledge: theoretical knowledge and applied knowledge. A lot of professors in universities that teach business are talking about theoretical knowledge. A lot of them haven't actually gone out and worked out what does it take to build $1 million, $1 billion business. Worked out, they don't know what it feels like at 2 a.m. when you've got more costs coming out of your pocket than you've got money coming in. When you've got an employee who's just going on maternity leave or got 5 kids and you have to tell them that you don't have enough money for the month and you need them to hold on. You don't know what it's like when you have this big event coming up and a speaker doesn't show up. Or you have a critical piece on your manufacturing line to develop your new product. And one of the products is made in a war zone that occurred a week ago. And suddenly you've got all the investors saying, where's my money? What's going on? You don't know what that feels like. And so a lot of what you teach people and a lot of what I have learned is it's not the basis of what is the information. Because in a world of AI, LLMs, Google, social media, information is everywhere. But it's about what do you do with that information and how does that information intersect with your own personal motivation and discipline. I could have all the information of what it would take to build a rocket ship, but if I don't have the motivation to do it, the discipline to make it happen, the team around me, the capital, etc., it's not going to happen. And so I think it's very important to be able to have that motivation and be able to dissect not just what is the information, but what do I do with it. The reason I mentioned mum and dad is a lot of the lessons that I have shared, these are lessons which are, they are maybe the 1 out of 100 which I've actually found applicable to my life. You can read me a story, you can read me a children's book with some underlying message and tones, but if you don't show me examples of how this has been applied and the benefits people have got from it, it's not really going to stick into my head. You can read all these books like How to Win Friends and Influence People or Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or even get into some really complicated finance. But I actually think that you don't need to know everything. You just need to know a certain few applied lessons which have had a positive or negative outcome and be able to use that accordingly. So, opportunities. So, this podcast has probably provided me with more opportunities than anything I've ever done in my life. And I've now gone to Eton College, I've worked at a hedge fund twice, I've worked at a VC, I'm at Duke University, it was 6th, now it's the 7th best university in the US. I have interviewed some of the best on the planet, and also I'm going to Goldman Sachs next summer, and hopefully I do a very good job there. But this podcast is still the thing that has given me the most opportunities. And why do I say that? I would say that when you ask someone a question, so let me say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you'll say, I've done my research about you, and I know that you're going to say, I want to go to medical school, I want to be a doctor, I want to specialize in brain surgery for children. I already know that. And if you respond to that question with that, I have not learned any new knowledge. So therefore, asking that question would be rather pointless. But if then I asked you that same question, and you instead responded with, I want to go to medical school, I want to be a doctor, I want to do brain surgery for children. Why? I want to do that because my best friend passed away from cancer. I want to make enough money to be able to start a foundation giving back to children. I want to do it because I want to prove to myself that when I was younger and I was unmotivated and I was undisciplined, that I can do extraordinary things. I want to do it because I love giving back. All of that knowledge and that add-on bit is new knowledge. It's knowledge that without me having spoken to you, I wouldn't have known. And so if you think about it, 100 times over, I have spoken to the best people on the planet, and I have learned knowledge of questions that I wouldn't have known. Google and ChatGPT and all these LLMs and whatever it is are only as good as the questions that I ask. If I ask, what does it take to be a doctor, it will quite literally tell me what it takes to be a doctor. But it won't tell me the highs and the lows, what it will feel like at 2 a.m. when things aren't going well. It won't tell me the human experience. That is what makes us unique. A ChatGPT and an AI model can't tell us what it's like to be human. And we are not machines that can work for 24 hours a day based off electricity or coal or whatever it is. We are people that sleep for 8 hours a day, that eat, that need water, that need love, that need care, that need rest and exercise. So we are constrained by this human condition, but we are also liberated by it, in that we can speak to other human beings, and the things that they can tell us, we can try, we can iterate, and we can learn from. And so that is why I would say I've learned more from anyone else. My dad would always tell me, and this is in the area of applied knowledge, do things not because you know that they will lead to good results, but because if you put enough good things and enough love into the world, good things will happen. You don't always need to have the direction of where you will go, but if you know that this path right now will lead to good things, then it is a thing worth pursuing no matter what. And this podcast, what I'm sharing with you, the reason I'm sharing all my thoughts as they come is because this is who I am and this is what's got me to this point. And so wherever I am in 10 years' time when you're watching this podcast, or even now as you're watching this podcast, you could look back at this and be like, did this person go on to achieve extraordinary things, or did he not? And if I didn't, feel free to use everything I've just said as reasons not to listen to me. But if I did, at least you know what I was thinking and how I plan on getting to those incredible places. I've written down my mum, and I've mentioned her a few times in this podcast because my mum and dad are the people that I look up to more than anyone else in the world. And I look up to my parents not simply because of who they are as my parents, but because every single day when I would wake up, my parents would always be on a mission to become better than they were yesterday. Of course, my parents weren't always in the best physical shape or, weren't always, smashing business or life or always the happiest people in the world. But they always had the motivation that tomorrow is going to be better than the day before. My parents would always encourage me to start coding, to start an app, to play these different sports, to try different instruments, to dare to believe that I could be the best in the world, to go to Eton College. I mean, that's one of the best schools in the world. My parents didn't go there, and they simply said, go for it, Harvey. We believe in you. We'll do anything we can to help you. And that got me there. It's that sense of belief in yourself that enables you to do great things. And that is what my parents have given me. And so I don't really care if I get to 8 years' time and I'm still talking about my mum every single day, because she is one of the people that I look up to more than anyone on the planet and that I love with all of my heart, and that has enabled me to become the person that I am today. And it's sad because there are limited photos, limited memories. There are limited lessons that I can take from my mum at this point in time now in October 2025, with her having passed in July 2023. But the impact of the lessons and the things that she taught me in my life up to the point from June 25th, 2004 up until July 12th, 2023, live and serve me every single day. One of the things that I've taken from my life, and I didn't really realize this straight away, because I would say that since her passing and maybe even the year prior when she got ill, the level of accomplishment that I've pursued has been significantly higher in the last 3 years than in the 18 years that I was alive prior. And I think I've almost used accomplishment and trying to be my best self as a reason and as a will to live. And I know that sounds like an extreme thing, but place yourself in my shoes, right? No matter what I do, no matter what I achieve in my life, no matter how rich, how wealthy, how much impact I have, how many people I help, how many people I talk to, connections I make, how much love I can put into the world, no thing in the world, not even AI, not anything, can bring my mum back. There is not a thing I can achieve, money I can make, impact I can have, prize I can win, school I can get into, job that I can have, that will let me talk to my mum again. And I think that my excuse or mechanism to get that is, I believe, as a Catholic, that I will see my mum again one day. In heaven, hopefully. And I hope that when I see my mum, that I would have done her proud. You know, when I used to go home at the end of every day at school, I'd speak to my parents for an hour, my mum and my dad. And I'd be like, Mum, today I did bang, 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 did bang, 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 here's my next project, my next mission, my next goal. And 9 times out of 10, these things wouldn't work. But I would have this strive and this belief in myself that I could make something extraordinary happen in my life. I don't know what I will become the best in the world at, or even if I will. But I have this inner desire that I'm going to try. And my mum was always, and my dad, were always the first people to tell me, you can do it, Harvey. Even when I was bullied in school, or insecure, or embarrassed, or didn't think I could do anything, they would always tell me, give it your best shot. I can recall when I was younger, I was one of the best long distance runners in Jersey. You know, I wasn't like top 5, but maybe like top 20. And that was still pretty good, you know, out of a couple hundred people. And I started to get really like insecure about it. And I remember I had this race in which I had to run like 3 or 4 years older. I got to the starting line, I was just so like insecure and like, you know, worried about what other people thought about me that I didn't even want to get to the starting line. And I remember going to Mum and Dad. I was like, Mum, Dad, do you care like if I come first or if I come last or whatever? And they almost laughed at me. They were like, Harvey, we never care if you win or if you lose. We'll still love you and we'll still support you. All we want to know is that you did your best. And you might be listening to this laughing, you know, listening to this podcast, this 21-year-old kid, and you'll be like, you know, what life experience does this guy have? Or, you know, to what extent is anything this guy says meaningful? But the reason that's so meaningful for me is no matter what I do, and I hope you take this forward with you in your own lives, no matter what I do, I know that my parents love me as long as I try. I wake up every day, and same with this podcast, and even at that point in August 12th, 2022, it might have been August 15th, I have no idea. And at least I tried. That is all I can do, and that's all I want to do, and that's all I hope you can do as well. You can only ever control the inputs, you can't control the outputs. So why are we all pretending that we're going to become the best in the world, or we have to be the best musician or athlete or entrepreneur, whatever it is, when you cannot control that? Control the controllables, control what you can do. Have a level of self-belief in yourself that you will make it happen. Have the belief that even if the whole world laughs in your face, at least you tried, and you will be better off for it having tried than never tried at all. They say a graveyard is full of people with limitless aspirations that they never made happen. The difference between those that are successful and not successful is not that they didn't have the same dreams, but that one of them made it happen and one of them didn't. I want to be one of the successful people, not because of luck, not because someone gave it to me, but because I'm going to do everything I possibly can to make it happen. And people will listen to this and probably think that I am joking or that it's funny. But I swore to my mum on her deathbed that I would do as much as I can to be the best I can be. This isn't my motto, this is my mum's, this is my mother's legacy. My mother's legacy is to go on and to do incredible things, and I will do that every single day. And that is why you probably wonder why I didn't have a 100th guest in this episode, because I think it is important to share the passion and the love that I have to do what I have to do on this earth and on this planet. And I want to share it with you. I want you to listen to this episode, you know, and whether this is the first time or the last time that you ever hear from me, and I want you to say, I am going to achieve great things. And it doesn't matter what anyone else believes. It doesn't matter if they laugh in your face, if you're embarrassed, if you're insecure, or if at the end of the day you can't make it happen. But I will bet everything I have that it is better to live a life knowing that you at least tried than you never tried at all. I remember the day before my mum died, The energy was filled with love and life. Even when my mum could literally not talk, she was still there and still the heartbeat of our home. But the day she died, even before I had gone and seen my mum or even known that she passed away, the house felt cold and empty. And now in my life, I've had a girlfriend for a year. I've got incredible friends. I've got 2 younger brothers and a little sister and a dad who I love more than anything. I've got, I've just said this, incredible friends that I would do anything for. And so that life and that love for the world is coming back. And I feel that connection through my mum, whether it's through these crystals or, necklace on my neck or whatever it is. But that love I have for my mum is still there. And I say the hardship of losing my mum because I think it's important to know that life is really, really hard. And I know there's always people that have it worse. The guy on the bike wants to be in the car, the guy in the car wants to have a nicer car, the guy in the car wants to have a chauffeur, and the guy with the chauffeur wants to just have more time with his family and wants to be the guy, have no responsibilities or whatever it is. But at the same time, I think it's not about not wanting to face hard things. And many people have it way harder than me. And there are people that I have it way harder than without a parent and, and just putting myself in very challenging and very meritocratic and challenging environments. So what I would say is that hard is not a thing that none of us face. We all face hardship. The guy in the gym faces hardship in having to lift up heavy weights, and the person that's overweight faces hardship because it's harder to move around, they're more sweaty, less healthy, etc. So it's about choosing your hard. It's about running away from hardship and becoming worse enough and weaker from it, or running into hardship and becoming better from it. I mean, even now, every day I take a cold shower, and it's literally one of the only ways that I can truly get my mind to rest and to focus on what I care about. I think I've kind of mentioned everything that I wanted to say in this podcast. I think that life is a funny thing. And I wrote this on a LinkedIn post, I think yesterday or the day before. The reason life is funny is life only truly begins when you realize that your life is going to end. And we all live our lives as if we're going to live forever. We speak to our friends, we speak to our grandparents, our parents, our loved ones, as if we're going to see them again every week. There's a statistic that's something like we spend 92% of the time with our parents before the ages of 18, compared to the rest of adulthood. So you live 8% of the time with your parents after adulthood. For me, I'd spent 96% or 95% of the time with my mum before she died 1 year into my adulthood. If you truly want to achieve incredible things in your life, as do I wouldn't be doing this podcast if not. I wouldn't be vulnerable and share this if not. You have to take that risk. I'm sharing my vulnerability with you and with the world right now because I think it's a necessary thing. I think it is a necessary thing for us to live our lives as if the next year is the last life that we're going to ever live. I think it is important to have such great impact at such a velocity that the world is better off for it. I think it is important to spread love into the world. There's so much hate in the world right now. To spread love so that in 5 years' time, you can look back and be like, yes, 2020, yes, 2025 was a hard time, but 2030, 2035, we're now better off for it. We can put our hands up the world, at politics, at the economy, at life, and simply affect defeat and accept that things are going to get worse. Or you can choose to at least try to make yourself and the world around you better. I feel very passionate about creating community for Personable, and I want to make this, whether it's a WhatsApp group chat or a Discord or an iMessage or an Instagram broadcast, whatever it is. I feel very passionate about those that truly listen in to every one of my podcasts that read my LinkedIn posts, that read the Substacks and send me messages. I want to put these people together, even if it's only 10 people, 20 people. Because every time that I put out a podcast, every time I iterate, every time I share, every time I learn, I want those people to be able to learn too, and also provide their feedback, and also find other people, that want to excel at such an extraordinary rate, that aren't afraid to put themselves out there, but mostly with the emphasis of creating the podcast into the best thing it possibly can. I truly believe that Personable is an incredible podcast, and I truly believe that someone listening to any of one of my episodes will be better off at the end of that hour than they were before. And so my goal and my mission now is actually to grow it as much as I possibly can. I had 4 goals. My 4 goals were get the best guests in the world, learn as much as I can, enable my listeners to learn as much as they can, and grow it. And I feel like I've ticked off the first 3. Of course, my interviewing my guests are going to keep getting better as a constant of time. But I think now my mission is to grow it as much as possible, to enable as many people to learn from it as possible. So if you want to be in this group chat or community in some capacity, and you've got some ideas about how to do it or improvements to the channel, I absolutely love that, and I'm all ears. So thank you for that. My 3 final questions that I wrote down. Number 1, if someone can ask me in 100 years' time, how would I want to be described? What would I want my legacy to be? I want to be someone that put more love into the world than he took. I want to be someone that's put profound level of impact in the world. I want to be very financially successful, but I also want to give back. I want to, whether it's me or Mr. Beast or whoever it is, I want to, after I've become very financially successful, I want to be able to give back and, help people with diseases. I mean, helping to solve cancer, or, trying to stop world hunger, or to, enable more people to have water. This all sounds like, funny things that, not funny things, but just things that anyone would say. But I think if you never believe things or can never put things in writing, or at least dream big, those things will never happen. My mum used to say, shoot for the stars and land on the moon, right? Like, if you have this level of, I want to be up here, at worst you will be here. And if you only tried on creating small steps, maybe you'd get to here. So with this podcast, right? 8 weeks ago, I said, by the end of the year, I want to hit 10,000 subscribers. Within 2 months, I hit 1,000. This was my freaking goal all along, and I hit it, right? So I share those goals because these are things that I actually want to achieve, and I want to have profound impact. And if there's people that I can help in some capacity towards that goal, even now, I'm happy to have the conversation, so let me know. I also would love to get married one day. I'd love to have kids. I'd love to have a family. I'd love to focus on, despite my ambition to keep growing incredible network, but also to re-engage and to keep my current network growing, I want to keep a very tight and close circle. I want to have a few friends that I can, that I can truly be I know as much about them as possible. I want the people around me to do just as well as me, if not better. I get so much joy out of seeing the people around me succeeding. And I actually think there's a backwards thing that when you actually put more love and more goodness into the world than you take, and you want the people around you to do better than you, in a weird sense, you're not annoyed if they do well, you actually do better than yourself. So that's what I want to do. I want to see my dad's business, The Draft. I want to see that become a unicorn. I want to see my brothers, Freddie and Max, become the best rugby players that have ever existed. And I want to see my little sister, Georgie, become the best tennis player that ever existed. So high hopes there. My penultimate question, what's next for me? As of the posting of this podcast, I've now got to focus on what do I want my podcast to look like from now through the end of the year. Do I want to have that focus more on public and private markets and other strong people? I think not necessarily changing the actual content of my podcast, but more so how it's advertised and how it's framed. I think I want to get back into short form content and trying to promote there in terms of having more honest conversations. I like the idea of not having too much editing or too much complication to my podcast. I think at some point it would also be good to do in-person podcasts, and I'm going to have some exclusive events which I'll probably announce later this year or in the new year. But I think the emphasis to keep up the velocity of growth, of learning, and of consistency, and I think good things will just naturally happen from that versus just stopping and hoping for the best. And the last thing is, Harvey, I asked this to every guest on Personable, and that is, what is one thing that I would want someone to take away from this episode? The one thing that I want you to take away from the episode is just fucking do it. That's my takeaway. You want to start a business, give it a shot. You want to get fitter, spend 5 minutes in the gym. That's it. I mean, just to be blunt with you, just do it. I mean, not to become some next, the Nike mantra, whatever it is. Just do it. I'm not embarrassed about posting online. I'm not embarrassed about putting myself out there. I'm not embarrassed to put my cards onto the table and to try and grow and create something incredible, because that is what I want to do. And you should do the same. Just because someone else is fitter, faster, better looking, better at business, went to a better school, better educated, so what? All right? So what? Give it a fucking go. Try and do something amazing. You will be amazed about how much you can achieve if you just try. And I'm being purposefully broad because I think there is a lot that so many people can take away from that into all of their lives. If you wrote on a piece of paper, just try, above your bed every single night, every morning you read that, just try, before you woke up, and before you woke up, when you woke up, and just before you go to bed, I can guarantee that you will be better off, legally, entertainment purposes only, can guarantee that you will be better off than you were before. Just try things. I just think if you just put some initiative and try and do something incredible, amazing things will happen. Let me know if you enjoyed this podcast. I am unbelievably grateful for every single person that's supported me up to this point. I hope that you've been enjoying this podcast just as much as I've enjoyed doing it. As you can imagine, if I wanted this podcast to do really well, because it's episode 100, I probably would have got some big guests. But for me, at the end of the day, it's more of a focus on the core, the community, love, spreading greatness into the world and enabling my listeners to become the best they can be. And I truly believe that even this podcast, not even this podcast, but this podcast has incredible wisdom on it, even if not the information itself, but the level of passion, motivation, and discipline behind it that got me to this point that you can take into your own life. Be great, be amazing, dare to believe and dare to succeed, otherwise you will never go and achieve amazing things in your life. I have been Harvey Bracken-Smith. This is Personable. Go out today and become the best that you can be, and then come back to this video and tell me about all the amazing things that you achieved. I hope that you subscribe to the podcast. I hope that you get involved in the community in some point and can add and help to grow this message of learning from the world's best to become the best you can be. If you want to follow me, subscribe on YouTube, follow me on LinkedIn, follow me on my Substack. And yeah, thank you. This is episode 100. Back to episode 1 now, 101. That's a very weird thing. Yeah. Thank you. And I can't wait to come back to this video in 10 years' time and become the best in the world at something. We'll see what that is. Have a great day.